A very good evening and welcome to the Talk of the Nation. My name is Romeo Busika, and of course I have a very important guest with us today to discuss a very pertinent issue that has been making headlines all over the week: the anti-corruption protests. Over 98 were arrested and arraigned in court. That is according to George Musisi, a human rights lawyer who is with us right here on Talk of the Nation. He's going to be breaking down most of these details, giving us an update on the number of people who were arrested, where they were charged, where they are being kept as we speak, what kind of charges are they battling in court, are they superfluous or not. He's going to be setting the record straight right here on Talk of the Nation. A very good evening, George Musisi. Thank you once again for joining us.
Good evening, Romeo. Good evening, the viewers, and pleasure to be here.
On Tuesday, we saw picketing taking center stage in Uganda. Anti-corruption protests. Young people were saying the Speaker of Parliament, Anita Among, should resign as a result of the biting corruption within the country. That's what we know on this side of the aisle. But you, as the lawyer who has been indulging and talking to these young people, what are their issues? What did they come out on Tuesday?
Of course, the issues of the young people are not so much different from issues of many other Ugandans, only that maybe these young people have chosen to protest about it peacefully.
Indeed.
Their number one issue now is about the overwhelming incidents, perceived or actual, about corruption, and they have seemed to highlight on Parliament. Of course, some other person would argue, like I've heard, that is Parliament the only corrupt place.
Indeed.
Of course, if you're choosing to protest, you wouldn't even protest about corruption in each and every. Sometimes the purpose of a protest is to focus on an institution, and then so they are rising up, saying that there's Parliament corruption incidents in Parliament are quite high, and that the leadership seems to have paid either blind eye or seems to be complicit in some of these incidents. And they are calling for the resignation, they are calling for deliberate steps by government to ensure that there is an end to that.
Well, of course, George, we saw the long arm of the law come out to arrest many of these young people. Nearly 100 were arrested, but
over 100.
Over 100. The viewer who is watching would like to know, what does the Constitution prescribe in such situations? Does it allow a one Romeo Busiku, a one Pfizer, a citizen of Uganda, to go out on the streets to show their dissatisfaction? Does the law prescribe?
The Constitution is quite clear on the right to peaceful assembly, on the right to peacefully protest, either as a lone individual or in a group of others. And whereas I agree that this right is not absolute, like Security loves to quote Article 43.
Indeed.
The limitation on that right has also been prescribed. It's not a discretion of an individual to decide that, no, you have ever enjoyed it. It has been described by a court, none less than the Supreme Court of this country, and say that the limitation must be that which is fair, which is allowed in free and democratic countries. So the limitation shouldn't be draconian. It shouldn't be at the discretion of a particular individual or at the whims of a particular individual. Secondly, when it comes to freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, and the freedom to protest and public gatherings, our Constitutional Court has pronounced itself very clearly, and not once, not twice, not three times, over time, over this issue. So I can proudly say that this issue, as far as courts are concerned, this right, it's settled. It has said that you don't have to get, this right is not dished out by anyone, not security, not government. So the only duty you have is to notify police, which these young people did. The duty of the security agencies has also been spelled out by the courts, that one, regulate that right. The security seems to think that they used to think that it's to grant permission or to prohibit, and they tend to think that by saying don't come on this day or don't come, it's regulating. Regulating means something has to go on, but with particular guidelines.
Indeed.
So what we've been seeing largely of almost all protests, which are against peaceful protests against anti-government, is to prohibit. Even the issue that police, the director of operations, gave in the statement that, you know, we've got intelligence that these roads might be hijacked by other people. The court has said that if you receive intelligence, credible intelligence, you deploy appropriately to ensure that this right takes place, whereas police does its duty of keeping law and order by nipping whatever criminals that may try to hijack an otherwise peaceful protest. So in as far as the law is concerned, this right is settled and its limitations.
And in your opinion, these young men and women didn't break any law?
Certainly. They did their duty that is mandated under the law to notify police. They peacefully carried out their protests. In fact, even by the police's own record, no one was caught burning tires, no one was caught blocking the road, no one was caught looting, no one was caught stepping in people's tomatoes like the president had feared. So they were all arrested in peaceful protest. And that's an exercise of their rights.
You say they were innocent, but have looked at the charge sheet. The police preferred some charges. Common nuisance. Common nuisance, idle and disorderly. Laws that have been,
of course, those are
agitated by Ugandans to be struck off the penal code.
Those are
all these are colonial laws.
Colonial relics, yes. Colonial relics, colonial laws which don't even shouldn't be discussed in the post-1995 constitutional dispensation. The offense of idle and disorderly, on which 4 people are even lying in prisons on that offense, the Constitutional Court has spoken. I remember even President Museveni released a dossier of over two pages asking police, how do you charge people who are looking for jobs with idle and disorderly? Then common nuisance. What is that? What does that even mean? What are the ingredients of common nuisance? Who determines what is a common nuisance? And if some of these people even just pass us by, they're not even participating in the peaceful protests. So the intention that clearly, since Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, was to find some lawful way of remanding, was otherwise using the law to persecute, to prohibit, to deter people from enjoying their right. That is why even so many basics, legal basics were pushed out of the window, were thrown out of the window. In law, we have something we call geographical jurisdiction, that a person cannot be tried in a court where the offense didn't take place. In other words, a chief magistrate's court of Nakawa cannot try someone for an offense which took place in Masaka. We saw people holding a press conference in Ntinda, charged at City Hall. A person caught with placards at Oasis Mall, charged at Nakawa. So it was a matter of finding a place where you can remand, and that is sad for this country. So
for the government, it was all about getting these young people off
the streets and putting them in some bit of lawful custody. Putting them in some bit of lawful custody, and then to say that, oh no, we have charged them. That is why...
And you're saying these charges do not hold water. Common nuisance, idle and disorderly. So you as the lawyers, how are you going to attack this issue in the courts of law?
Of course, first and foremost, the most important issue is to secure the freedoms of those young people, because we believe that they're not supposed to be there. Ironically, they are protesting against corruption, and there are so many suspects on corruption-related charges who are out on bail. So the first important thing is to do our best to secure the freedoms, at least in the short run, of these people, and then we can go to the issue of the charges later.
The DPP is seeking to amend the charge sheet. What does that mean, George, for the protesters?
Of course, the only meaningful result would be for the DPP to seek to amend and possibly drop these charges, because applying yourself to the law...
Do you think she seeks to amend and drop because the president is saying, according to his intelligence, these young people had a much more sinister move to actually bring more chaos within Uganda on Tuesday, and he says the charge of common nuisance was misguided by the police officers.
I want to give
the amendment.
I want to give the office of the DPP a benefit of doubt. First of all, under the Constitution, it's not supposed to act under the direction of anyone. It's supposed to be guided by the law and evidence. It's not supposed to be whimsical or arbitrary when it's applying those charges. So I want to give you the benefit of doubt that they will apply the law, and if they did, they will drop the charges. But then again, you cannot charge people based on intentions. Crimes are committed when people put their intentions in action. You don't charge people on the basis of what you think they may be about to commit.
George Musisi, we are really time bad, but there is this pertinent question. Where is the funding coming from to help these young people with all the legal processes they are going through? Aren't you worried that you'll be strained if this process is prolonged by the central government or the courts of law? Where will the funding come from? And where is it coming from at this point?
Well, to the best of my knowledge, the legal representation that has so far happened has been purely pro bono of people. We've seen out calls on social media, the same way people are called. I'm even surprised that people are saying people are funded to go on the streets. I've seen calls on social media saying, please join the protest for that's 2 weeks. So just like there was a call, even Uganda Law Society put out a call for lawyers who are willing. And indeed, I know that many people, many of the lawyers who appeared, some of them just responded to the call. So the issue of funding sometimes is meant to demobilize, such that people can think that, oh, maybe so and so pocketed, they're having figures thrown around, pocketed some $1 million and is not giving the rest of us. But yes, of course, it would pose a challenge if the processes are stretched out, and then because we know we have so many people in detention facilities and so on and so forth. That is why we think that the most reasonable thing to do would be to drop the charges against these people because they were in exercise of a peaceful right.
And indeed, before I let you go, this is the last question. How many people are in custody? For us, we know 98. Set the record straight. How many are in custody? How many have been remanded? From
our records, 98 people have been remanded. We know that there are some people who are in police custody, or I wouldn't say police, but security agencies custody, but not yet arraigned in court. There's a case of Wambi Peter, he was arrested on Monday. There's a case of Shamim Nalima. Stephen Nwaga was dropped somewhere along the road yesterday evening without being produced in court. There is Samuel Kanya, who is still in custody. So there are cases of people who are in security custody, but not yet arraigned in court. And then there are those whose relatives have reported them missing, but we don't even know yet where they are. So, because even the statement, it took only about a few hours ago that the police released the statement about how many people had arrested.
Indeed. George Best Musisi, thank you so much for having made the time to speak to us.
Pleasure.
He's been giving us an update on the number of people who are incarcerated and actually battling these cases in the courts of law relating to the anti-corruption protests. Thank you so much for making the time to talk to us.
Pleasure.
And indeed, you're still watching NTV Weekend Edition. Let's take a very short break. We'll return with more news. Keep it here. Don't go too far.